And welcome, and you are joining us for the crucial, ever important April 1st snow survey here at Phillips Station. So this is the fourth one of the season, and today the survey is underway and being led by Andy Rising, manager of DWR's Snow Surveys and Water Supply Forecasting Unit. So we're up here at Phillips Station where DWR has conducted manual snow surveys since 1941 that records both snow depth and snow water content. And one of the things that I wanted to point out as the team is getting underway, on the snow tube, you'll notice that there are two pieces of red tape. The bottom portion is what is the average for snow water content at this location. The red tape that is at the top of the pole is the average depth of snow here at this location. So the measurements that are taken here are factored into other measurements that happen throughout the state that gives us the average of how the snowpack is doing. And after a very unseasonably warm, record-breaking March with record high temperatures, things are looking very interesting for the snowpack taking place in the Sierra Nevada. So how the state is looking so far. This year is just an example of how California seasons can really swing between extremes. Our very first snow survey was helped by some atmospheric rivers in mid to late December, and that brought the statewide snowpack to 71% of average. So it was a good start. But then the second snow survey came after some warm storms at the beginning of January, which meant below average snowpack accumulation. Then the rest of that month was pretty dry with warmer temperatures. That meant snowpack loss, and the statewide snowpack was 59% of average for that date. Then the third snow survey, the month of February, was mixed. The state got some cold precipitation that brought snow to lower elevations, but then that was followed by a warmer storm, and the statewide snowpack was 66% of average for the date. Which now brings us to today, coming off of a March that had multi-day, record-breaking heat and extremely dry conditions. So we're expecting low numbers today. We'll wait to see what Andy says after his calculations, but again, this is shaping up to be one of the lowest snowpack averages on record. So one thing that you'll notice as the team is going out, they will go to all 6 locations that they measure to get their snow tube measurements. But since there's not enough snow on the ground to really drive the tube into to weigh it, they're using an orange bag, and they will put the snow accumulation at each site into the orange bag and then weigh that to get the measurement for today. So when there isn't enough snow to weigh at each of those spots, that's what they end up doing. So why April 1st matters. Now, we refer to the April 1st average because in terms of snow water content, that's typically when the snowpack is at its peak each year in the Sierra Nevada. So usually any time before April 1st when the snowpack builds through storm events that bring precipitation in the form of snow. But after building through the winter, when April 1st happens, it's usually when the sun is at the right angle and the temperatures are at the level that prevents the snowpack from building, and that's when snow melt or runoff begins to take place. So while we are in the midst of some storm activity happening right now, you can kind of see it in the camera there. We are getting a little bit of snowfall right now. It's helpful, but all forecasts indicate it won't come anywhere close to make up for the extremely hot and dry March that accelerated snowmelt across the Sierra Nevada. So as the team is going and they are gathering their bits of snow, they will take that at the end, weigh out the tube, and then measure that. And Andy will do his calculations to give us the snow depth as well as the snow water content at this location. And he'll come to the microphone after the measurements conclude in about 10 to 15 minutes afterwards to give us what that is. So stick around. We'll be back with another look. And welcome if you are just joining us. We are in the middle of the fourth and ever important April 1st snow survey up here at Phillips Station. The snow survey team of the Snow Surveys and Water Supply Forecasting Unit are finalizing their last few measurements out here on the snow course, where, as you can see, things are looking pretty sparse. Up until a couple days ago, this was dry ground, and then this most recent storm system brought a little bit of precipitation and some snowfall, which it's currently snowing lightly here up at Phillips Station. So Andy Rising, who is leading the snow survey team, is doing his measurements, reaching out to and going to 6 specific spots up here at this location. They'll get those totaled and averaged, and then come to the microphone in about 10 to 15 minutes after the survey concludes to give us what the numbers are. And of course, after a record-breaking March with unseasonably high temperatures and very low precipitation, we're expecting this to be one of the lowest snow surveys on record up here at Phillips Station. So stick around and we will bring those numbers very shortly.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us here up at Phillips Station. We're here for the April 1st snow survey here at Phillips. My name is Jason Entz and I'm an information officer with the California Department of Water Resources. In a moment, I'm going to hand it over to Andy Rising, manager of DWR's Snow Surveys and Water Supply Forecasting Unit, to talk about today's results and what he saw here at Phillips. And then we'll be hearing comments from DWR Director Carla Namath. As a reminder, Phillips here is just one of over 260 snow courses across the Sierra Nevada that are measured at the top of every month by DWR and our partners in the California Cooperative Snow Surveys program, which consists of over 50 agencies across the state that every year help gather the critical information and data on the snowpack that DWR uses to create accurate water supply forecasts. These water supply forecasts are critical for reservoir operators and water managers to understand just how much water and snowmelt will be coming down the mountain to refill our reservoirs in the spring and summer. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Andy to talk about what he found here today at Phillips. Andy?
All right, thanks, Jason. Hi, yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Andy Rising. I'm manager of Snow Surveys and Water Supply Forecasting Unit at the Department of Water Resources. I just wanted to start off to kind of demonstrate, obviously, we measured today, but there was actually no measurable snow. So our instruments that we use aren't able to pick up any snow. So we're calling today's measurement zero. I'll get to that in a minute. But this tube is kind of representing what an average April 1st is here at Phillips Station. So we've got about 2 feet of depth and 5 feet of 5 feet of depth and 2 feet of snow water content, which essentially is an average over 30 years, the last 30 years that we've had here at Phillips. So normally we'd be standing right here if we had an average year. This was obviously a below average year. So let me get to the results. I'm going to hand this to you, Jason. So yeah, 24 inches of water content is average here, with a density of 42% around April 1st. Density changes throughout the year, but around this time of year, we're expecting about 40% density, which gives us the 5 foot of elevation that we expect to be standing on. Today, our survey recorded 0 inches of water content and 0 inches of depth, which puts us at 0% of average for this particular location, which also represents the second lowest April 1st measurement. With snow on the ground, it is better than 2015, which was 0. If you were here back then, we'd walk across a dry field with the governor, Brown, back then. But that's not necessarily the situation statewide, so I want to get you a little bit more perspective. Based on this morning's data from our automated snow sensor network, the statewide snowpack stands at 18% of average. And based on snow sensors, that's also the second driest in 24 years of record since we've been calculating it. If we use snow courses as a reference, this is also the second driest or second lowest snowpack in about 75 years, since 1950. So April 2015 was 0.05% total statewide. So we're at 18% today. So better than 2015, but still second. The snowpack typically reaches its peak around April 1st, as I mentioned before. Some years that peak happens a bit earlier, a bit later. But this year we saw a significant departure from that historical norm. According to the automated snow sensor network that we have, we peaked around April 24th. So when I was here last month with you all, we had already peaked. As we know, March was dry as a bone until yesterday. So whether yesterday helped whether we broke the record yesterday of the driest March, I don't know yet, but it was very close. So with no precipitation, we didn't add any snowpack. We didn't build any towards our goal of April 1st, having the peak then. Since 1998, there have been only 4 years that have seen the snowpack peak in February. And now, 6 of the lowest April 1st snowpacks on record have occurred since 2007. And the snowmelt that we saw in March looked more like we would typically see in later April or even May. It came off really fast, as you know, with that heat dome that we had. That's the comments I have. I'm going to pass it over to our director, Carla Nemeth.
Thank you, Andy and Jason, and I want to welcome you all to probably one of the quickest snow surveys we've had, and maybe one where people could actually use an umbrella. And that's just the reality that we're living in. I'm here to talk about the implications for water supply and water supply management throughout the state. As Andy said, I think maybe we have a new word for this year, which is there's a bit of snow on the ground, but our measurement is essentially a non-detect, which means there's not enough to measure in a meaningful way. As Andy was also describing, a real challenge this year has been really 2 things. Most of our precipitation, which is just below average this year, came as rain. And it's the combination of rain and limited snow and warmer temperatures in March that are setting us up for what will be a challenging year for water management in the state. The fortunate news is that reservoirs are about full across the state, really important. But what it means, if I can take you to where we would traditionally be here in about July or August, meaning we would have enjoyed a nice attenuated snow melt over the course of the next 3 months that would be feeding our rivers, streams, and reservoirs. And we would be heading into July and April really right about at that average mark. What's different about this year is that we don't have that. So what we have in our reservoirs is what we have. And we have it to manage really for the next 6 months or so until we hit October. So what that really means is we have to be managing water as carefully as we can. We will be looking towards September and October to understand if we get some early season rain, which will be crucial in setting us up for next year. We're getting a lot of questions about, are we heading into a hydrologic drought? The answer is I don't know. We clearly have, I think, perhaps not a new terminology, but something I think we're hearing about west-wide is something called a snow drought, where we do get precipitation, but we just don't get the snow. And it's that lack of snow that's going to challenge our overall storage that we all rely on to essentially get from April all the way through till the water year starts in October. We will know with, I think, more clarity next year if if this year is in fact the start of a hydrologic drought in California and throughout the West. Since 2015 and since 2021, where we had a very intense, rapid melt early in the year, the department has been investing in improved forecasting. These are things like expanding our aerial snow observations, and what that means is we're essentially, if folks are familiar with LIDAR, it essentially means measuring from the air the snow water content, not just at elevations such as this one, but up and over the peaks. That becomes more and more important when our snow is limited and when our actual snow is creeping further and further upslope in the Sierra. So that helps us tell that overall picture. The other thing we're taking a look at is much more detailed understanding of our watersheds. Traditionally, simply measuring snowpack in watersheds and understanding that snowpack in the context of 100-year hydrology, I think with some of those stats about, 6 times, we've had our 6 lowest measurements since 2007. I think we all understand intuitively that relying on that 100-year hydrology will not serve us. It will not serve our communities, our economy, or our environment. So we're starting to look at a lot more detailed characteristics of watersheds. And then finally, and certainly something we have accelerated since 2021, is understanding the effects of warming temperatures and these heat domes on soil moisture. When we have limited moisture, when we've had these heat domes that dry out the soils, it means even with the little bit of snow that we have, that runoff tends to seep into the ground and also limits the amount of storage we end up in our reservoirs. So we're managing all of those things. The key things we need to do into the future is retrofit our infrastructure to deal with this new pattern, to deal with these shortened and wetter winters. We need to use our water supplies more than once through significant investment in water recycling, and we need to use it more efficiently. And that's the future we have here in California. Stay tuned for how things start to shape up over the summer and September and October. But what we have in our reservoirs in California is all we're going to get. So thanks again for coming out. And I think, Jason, we're going to take a few questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you very much, Carla. So as mentioned before, we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions now. So I'll try and get to everyone. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to clarify, when we peaked our snowpack in February, according to our snow sensor network, Andy.
Yeah, statewide we peaked around February 24th, 25th, and that was in all regions. We look at regionally. North is basically from north of Lake Tahoe into the Cascades and Trinities, and then from Tahoe down to Yosemite is our central region, and from south of Yosemite is essentially our southern region. We definitely varied this year as far as regional snowpack. I'll just say roughly on that day we were about 80% of average snowpack on February 25th in the south, 60% in the central, and 40% up north. And so it's all melted off with that heat dome. A lot of it has melted off. We still have about 33% down in the south left. There's still 20 or so percent left in the central, and just like 5 or 6% left in the north, which is the same as 2015. So the north definitely got shorted on the snow this year. Go ahead. Absolutely. Jason, you want to repeat the question?
Yeah, just the question, just to summarize this hydraulic year that we've seen this winter, all the back and forth between dry and wet. Andy, if you just summarize kind of the wild swings that we've seen so far.
Yeah, we started off the year with a bunch of storms, atmospheric river. A lot of them were warm, but they did produce some snow, so our snowpack was building through like the first week in January. So, the end of December and beginning of January was a big storm period for us. That helped build our snowpack to good levels at that point. And then we hit a 5-week dry period. We came back on February 1, it was still in the middle of that dry period, and we had another 2 weeks of dry until we had finally a very cold storm, which was a great snow producer statewide. We got a bunch of snow, and then the next week we had that big atmospheric river, very warm, and started the melt process. That was right around just before the 25th, and that was our peak. And so it's been coming off steeply ever since. And so with a 4-week dry March, now Mother Nature blesses us with another little joke of a storm, but here we are. And it's going to add, so we're blessed to have it fall now versus not. And we hope for a few more little storms, but we're really towards the end of our rain season. So if we get other storms, it'll likely be rain, which will contribute a little bit, but for the most part, we feel like we're likely done.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Carl, if you want to just on, so basically for the average person, the average Californian, what does this low snowpack mean for us?
This low snowpack means we have limited storage heading into our warm summer months. So it means every Californian needs to use water as carefully as they can. Depending on where you live, you may have set days in which to water your lawn or water your landscaping. You need to pay attention to that and be mindful of things like car washing. And we're not in a hydrologic drought, but the supplies that we have are all we have. And what we save today will be a very important hedge against the potential for a dry next year. Good question. And I think the question is, what does this mean for fire season? And ultimately, you should talk to the true experts at CAL FIRE. But essentially, when we have warmer conditions earlier and limited snow, it means the fire season and fire type weather starts sooner. So I think they are ready for a long fire season, and we'll see how that weather shapes up.
Any more questions today from anyone?
I think just one, I know that Andy had mentioned this a little bit more, but it's funny that we're talking about this really dry, when it is snowing.
Right.
I know you said it's not a joke in the storm, but is there any hope at all that even a few more storms can really bring it up a little bit, or is it just that's it?
Yeah, thank you. So, Andy, May, if you want to address that one. So the question again was, if we can expect any more little storms. And Andy, maybe you can address this storm in the forecast, how much we expect it to add, what kind of slight difference will it make, how much precipitation may this actually contribute, what will it do for the snowpack, maybe just slow down the melt that we've been seeing, kind of what this storm will do, and if we expect any more.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it's colder, right? It's snowing, so that has helped with the cloud cover. I'm sure it's slowed down our snow melt, And higher elevations, it is adding to the snowpack, but I think overall over the 3 days of this storm was expecting 2 inches, maybe 3. So that, you consider that over the whole ground, that can add. It will contribute to our streams. It'll make the soil moist again. But on the big picture, it's not a whole lot. But at this point, after this point, we'll take anything that we can get. And we're not done, but the likelihood of larger storms coming from here on out is lower. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So, Carla, maybe you want to address that one. The question again is kind of when do we consider ourselves to be in a drought here in California?
So as I mentioned, we had just a smidge below average precipitation. So even with that, we're not in a hydrologic drought. We have to have, really a full series of dry conditions to establish a hydrologic drought. A hydrologic drought is separate from what we consider a water supply drought, and that usually happens when we have several hydrologically dry conditions in a row. I think the new thing we're all grappling with is, even when we have precipitation, what is the role of warming temperatures in accelerating hydrologic drought conditions? So we're looking at all of those things. That's why our understanding of soil moisture has become crucial for us to understand not just what's falling from the sky, but where it's going and what eventually becomes runoff in rivers, streams, and reservoirs.
Okay, if there's any other questions today? Yeah.
Now looking ahead, though, as you mentioned, you have to name it, what kind of trend December, but a lot of the focus now is on September and October.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, the question is, where is the focus now? What's the next thing we're going to be looking for?
That's right. We're going to be looking for September and October to hopefully we would get some early season rains. It wasn't too long ago. I think Sacramento set its single day rainfall high in October. So it does happen. And there's some real utility to that, even when it's coming as wet. Because what that does is it essentially wets the soils. So then other future storms, when we get into what is that December, late December, January, February, our traditional, the heart of our wet season, it means that things that precipitation or snow that falls after that does start to generate actual runoff into, so that's we call that our setup season. So if we do get the precipitation, we know we can rely on it to actually show up in reservoirs.
Any other questions today? Okay. Well, if not, thank you everyone for joining us again, and we'll see you back here at Phillips next winter. And as a reminder, everyone continue to watch their local forecast and think about conservation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.